President Trump was told by the Attorney General that he is in the Jeffrey Epstein files. He was told he was in the files 2 months ago, and then last week said, no, he wasn't. He was. This was during a briefing on the findings of the Justice Department's review of the documents related to Epstein. That's according to sources familiar with the discussion. Those sources said the Justice Department's review found that the files appeared to include several unsubstantiated claims that they determined not to be credible, including those relating to Trump. Bondi also raised in the meeting that several names of other high-profile figures were mentioned, the official said. And it's worth noting that being mentioned in the files does not in any way indicate wrongdoing.
Hi buddies, Adam is here. So this is just happening right now. A federal judge just declared on the record in open court that Attorney General Pam Bondi committed crimes: obstruction of justice, perjury, evidence tampering. And then security cameras captured her team physically removing files from a building minutes after the ruling. The timestamps match. The footage is real. The judge who caught her said it plainly. The path to prison is now clear.
More than 3 million pages, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images. CNN teams are carefully sifting through the largest, and what the Justice Department says is the last, batch of Jeffrey Epstein files. It's an enormous trove of documents, and it includes references to some of the richest and most powerful people on the planet. That includes the current president, a former president, cabinet secretaries, a former prime minister, billionaires, and the list goes on and on and on.
Judge Tanya Chutkan was presiding over a federal hearing about withheld Department of Justice documents related to the Epstein case. For months, Bondi had been stonewalling. For months, the DOJ had been claiming the documents were properly classified and could not be released. For months, Bondi had been testifying under oath that she was following proper legal procedures. Judge Chutkan did not believe her. And after reviewing the evidence, after examining the documents in question, after putting Bondi's claims under the microscope, the judge delivered a ruling that should terrify everyone in the Trump administration. She said Bondi deliberately lied under oath.
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files.
I'm going to claim my time. I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock.
Stop the clock. The legislation.
Time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is on videotape.
She said Bondi engaged in obstruction of justice. She said the path to federal prison is clear for the Attorney General of the United States. Read that again. A federal judge just told the nation's top law enforcement officer that she belongs in prison. That is not normal. That has never been normal. That is a complete and total meltdown of the Justice Department from the inside. And here is what triggered this judicial explosion. 16 documents. 16 specific files that Bondi tried to bury. 16 documents that contained photographs of Donald Trump. Photographs of Trump at Epstein parties. Photographs that showed Trump's connections to the Epstein network. Photographs that Bondi apparently believed would damage the president so severely that she was willing to commit crimes to keep them hidden. Bondi testified under oath that these documents were properly classified. She testified that they could not be released for national security reasons. She testified that there were no Trump-related documents being improperly withheld. Judge Chutkan examined the documents and determined that every single one of those claims was false. The documents were not properly classified. There were no national security justifications for withholding them, and they absolutely contained evidence of Trump's involvement with Epstein. That is perjury. Lying under oath to a federal judge is a crime, and Bondi did it repeatedly and systematically. But the lies were only the beginning, because when Judge Chutkan ordered the documents released, when she made clear that the cover-up would not stand, Bondi's team did something that will likely land them all in criminal court. They removed evidence, security footage has surfaced showing Bondi's people exiting a building with evidence bags. The timestamps on that footage match exactly to the time immediately following Judge Chutkan's ruling. The judge exposes the cover-up, and minutes later, Bondi's team is physically carrying files out of the building. You cannot make this up. You cannot spin this. The video evidence is there for the world to see. This is what consciousness of guilt looks like. This is what happens when people know they have been caught and desperately try to destroy the proof before it can be used against them. And now that proof exists in two forms. The documents themselves, which were eventually released and which showed exactly what Bondi was trying to hide, and the security footage, which shows Bondi's team trying to make those documents disappear. Let me walk you through exactly why this is so devastating, not just for Bondi, but for the entire Trump administration. First, the legal exposure for Bondi is now existential. Judge Chutkan's findings are on the record. A federal judge has formally declared that the Attorney General committed perjury and obstruction. That is not an allegation. That is not a political attack. That is a judicial determination that will guide every prosecutor who looks at this case. The path to prison is clear, the judge said. That means the legal roadblocks have been removed. That means the Justice Department, ironically the very department Bondi was supposed to be leading, can now move forward with criminal charges. Second, the evidence is overwhelming. You have the documents themselves, which prove Bondi was lying about their classification and content. You have the security footage, which proves Bondi's team attempted to destroy evidence after the judge's ruling. You have the timeline, which shows the cover-up unfolding in real time. And you have the judge's own findings, which put the judicial branch's stamp of approval on the conclusion that crimes were committed. This is not a he said, she said situation. This is a mountain of objective proof. Third, this directly implicates Donald Trump. Bondi was not acting in a vacuum. Bondi is Trump's Attorney General. Bondi was suppressing documents that contained photographs of Trump. Bondi was trying to protect Trump from the fallout of those photographs becoming public. And the natural inference, the inference any jury will make, is that Bondi was acting on Trump's behalf, or at least in Trump's interest. The cover-up was designed to protect the president, and that means the president is at the center of the obstruction. Fourth, this is part of a pattern. Bondi is not the first Trump official to face accusations of evidence tampering and obstruction. She is not the first to be held in contempt. She is not the first to have a federal judge accuse her of crimes. The pattern is clear. The Trump administration operates as though the law does not apply to them. They suppress evidence, they attack judges, they obstruct justice, and they do it all while claiming to be the victims of a witch hunt. But here is the difference this time. The evidence is on video, the judge's ruling is on the record, and the Attorney General herself is the one caught in the act. Let me take you back to the hearing itself, because the way Judge Chutkan dismantled Bondi's credibility was brutal and methodical. The judge started with the classification claims. Bondi had argued that the 16 documents could not be released because they contained classified information. Judge Chutkan reviewed the documents and found no valid classification markings. She found no national security justification for withholding them. She found that Bondi had essentially made up the classification claim to keep the documents hidden. Then the judge moved to the Trump connection. Bondi had testified that there were no Trump-related documents being improperly withheld. Judge Chutkan examined the documents and found multiple photographs of Trump, multiple references to Trump's connections to Epstein, multiple pieces of evidence that were directly relevant to understanding Trump's involvement in the Epstein network. Bondi's testimony was not just wrong, it was deliberately false. Then the judge addressed the obstruction. Bondi had been ordered to produce these documents months earlier. She had ignored those orders. She had delayed. She had made excuses. She had done everything possible to keep the documents from seeing the light of day. And when the judge finally forced the issue, when the documents were finally released, they revealed exactly what Bondi had been trying to hide. Judge Chutkan's conclusion was devastating. She said Bondi had engaged in a deliberate, systematic effort to suppress evidence. She said Bondi had lied under oath to protect the president. She said Bondi's conduct warranted criminal prosecution. And she said the path to federal prison was clear. That last phrase is the one that will haunt Bondi. The path to federal prison is clear. That is not a judge expressing an opinion. That is a judge making a formal finding that criminal charges are not just possible but appropriate. That is a judge telling federal prosecutors that they have both the evidence and the legal basis to move forward. And now we have the security footage. Because while the judge's ruling was devastating on its own, the video evidence takes this to an entirely different level. The footage shows Bondi's team leaving a building with evidence bags. The timestamps show that this happened immediately after Judge Chutkan's ruling. The location matches the place where the Epstein documents were being stored, and the people in the footage are identifiable as Bondi's staff. This is not ambiguous. This is not something that can be explained away as a routine document move. This is evidence tampering caught on camera. This is obstruction of justice in high definition. And this footage is going to be played in every news broadcast, every courtroom, and every political ad from now until the election. Think about what that footage proves. It proves that Bondi knew she had been caught. The judge had just exposed the cover-up. The documents were about to be released. And Bondi's response was not to cooperate. It was not to come clean. It was to try to destroy the evidence. That is the behavior of someone who knows they have committed crimes and is desperate to avoid the consequences. The House Judiciary Committee has already taken notice. During a heated hearing, members of Congress confronted Bondi about the Epstein documents and the security footage. Bondi's response was telling. She did not deny the allegations. She did not offer a plausible explanation for the footage. Instead, she attacked the judges. She called them activist judges. She complained about judicial interference. She acted like the victim of a conspiracy rather than the perpetrator of a crime. That defensiveness, that anger, that refusal to engage with the actual evidence, that is what guilt looks like. That is what happens when someone has no legitimate defense and can only lash out at the people holding them accountable. And here is where this connects to the broader pattern of misconduct in the Trump administration. Because Bondi is not alone. We have seen Trump himself attack judges repeatedly. We have seen Trump try to seize control of the Justice Department. We have seen Trump's allies destroy evidence, withhold documents, and obstruct investigations at every turn. The Bondi scandal is not an isolated incident. It is the logical conclusion of a culture of corruption that starts at the top and flows downward. The separate issue with doxing protesters' photographs is further proof of this pattern. Judge Chutkan was not the only federal judge to scold Bondi. Another judge in a separate case called Bondi's conduct perilous and warned that she was abusing her power to target political opponents. That is, two federal judges in two different cases, essentially saying the same thing. Pam Bondi is unfit for office. Pam Bondi is abusing her authority, and Pam Bondi belongs in court facing criminal charges. So what happens now? Bondi cannot stay as Attorney General. That is no longer a political question. It is a practical impossibility. How can the nation's top law enforcement officer remain in office while a federal judge has declared that she committed perjury and obstruction? How can she oversee the Justice Department when she is likely to be the target of a criminal investigation by that same department? Bondi is toxic. Bondi is finished. And Trump is going to have to replace her, which will only keep the scandal in the headlines and raise more questions about why he kept her around for so long. Criminal charges are coming. Judge Chutkan's finding that the path to federal prison is clear is not just rhetoric. It is a signal to prosecutors. It is an invitation to act. And federal prosecutors, even those within the Justice Department, are going to have to decide whether they can ignore a federal judge's formal finding that the Attorney General committed crimes. The pressure to charge Bondi will be immense. And the evidence, the documents, the footage, the timeline is strong enough to convict. This is going to devastate Trump politically. The midterms are approaching. Voters are paying attention. And when they see that Trump's Attorney General was caught on camera removing evidence, when they hear a federal judge say that Bondi belongs in prison, they are going to draw conclusions about the entire Trump administration. They are going to conclude that corruption is systemic. They are going to conclude that the rule of law has broken down. And they are going to vote accordingly. Congress is going to use this. The Epstein documents, the security footage, the judge's findings, all of it is ammunition for impeachment proceedings. Democrats in the House already have the votes to impeach Trump again. The question has always been whether Senate Republicans would convict. But when the Attorney General is facing prison time for protecting Trump, when there is video evidence of evidence tampering, when a federal judge has declared that crimes were committed, even Republican senators are going to have a hard time looking away. Let me be clear about what is at stake here. This is not about politics. This is not about partisanship. This is about whether the rule of law still means anything in the United States. The Attorney General of the United States was caught on camera removing evidence after a federal judge ordered that evidence released. She was found to have lied under oath. She was found to have obstructed justice. And a federal judge said she belongs in prison. If that does not result in criminal charges, if that does not result in removal from office, if that does not result in consequences, then the message is clear. The Attorney General is above the law. The President is above the law, and the entire system of accountability has collapsed. But I do not think that is going to happen. I think the evidence is too strong, the footage is too clear, the judge's findings are too definitive. Pam Bondi is going to face criminal charges. Pam Bondi is going to lose her law license. Pam Bondi is probably going to prison, and Donald Trump is going to be dragged down with her. Because Bondi was not acting alone. Bondi was protecting Trump. Bondi was covering up for Trump. Bondi was willing to commit crimes for Trump. And now that the cover-up has been exposed, now that the evidence is public, now that a federal judge has declared that crimes were committed, the question is not whether Trump will be implicated. The question is how badly. The security footage is the key. Video evidence is powerful. Video evidence is persuasive. Video evidence is impossible to spin. When voters see Bondi's team carrying evidence bags out of a building minutes after a judge exposed the cover-up, they are not going to need a law degree to understand what happened. They are going to see obstruction, they are going to see guilt, and they are going to vote to clean house. The bottom line is this: Pam Bondi is going down. The Attorney General of the United States has been caught committing crimes on camera. A federal judge has declared that she belongs in prison. The evidence is overwhelming. The political fallout is going to be catastrophic for Trump. And the only question remaining is how many people in the Trump administration are going to be indicted alongside her. Judge Chutkan said the path to federal prison is clear. She was not exaggerating. She was not being dramatic. She was stating a fact. The legal pathway exists. The evidence exists. The judicial findings exist. Now all that remains is for prosecutors to walk through the door that the judge has opened. And when they do, when Pam Bondi is indicted, when the security footage is played in court, when the 16 documents with Trump's photographs become evidence in a criminal trial, the Trump administration will finally face the accountability that has been evading it for years. The rule of law is not dead, it has just been sleeping, and Judge Chutkan just woke it up.